Anyway, Bruce.
All right. We're actually here about ham radio heresy, otherwise known as using digital methods. And this makes it worse than most. You can do digitally with this little thing, talk to, I don't know, I've talked to Israel, I've talked to Ireland, I've talked to all kinds of other places. So you realize this is heresy, which is why I'm wearing my heretic shirt. Because the true ham is this kind of grumpy old guy down in the basement, right, with a straight key, none of this crazy paddle stuff, right, using tubes, okay, going out to a long wire, maybe a trapped 80 meter at most, okay, big stogie in his mouth, puffing away, glass of beer, runs a straight key with his right hand, picks up the beer with his left. That's a real ham. Anything else is just faking, right? So this is faking it big time. All right, so this is DMR, this is my little unit right here. I can literally, and have literally talked all over the world in this thing. Well, no, I haven't gotten actually much out of Europe. All right, so a lot of people have asked me how you set it up and what it's about. So this is a brief introduction to that. There are four digital modes we have running in Richmond. D-Star, that's the one that this club sponsored, and it's the oldest around here. It's an open standard, but the chip required to make it work well is pretty expensive, and the only people who actually produce the chip and are selling it are ICOM. Actually, you could get them from some other people with using ICOM's chip, and so it's pretty expensive. You could do it with software, but it takes a good sized chip. System Fusion is the Yaesu one. They thought ICOM had a good hold on it, so they tried their own thing. System Fusion has the advantage of being both analog and digital. On the same repeater, you can do both. That's a really good fit for places that are not large cities where you can afford to have one repeater. You can do both. P25, okay, we have that in Richmond. That's an older Motorola standard used by public safety, that sort of thing. And then DMR, which is another public safety oriented one, commercial system for Motorola, most heavily used in Europe. That's the driving force of it. Because they're used by public governmental organizations, the codec, it has to be open. So it can't. So that's why other people can work with it. All right. One of the things you need to think about is what I want to do with digital. Okay, because they each have their capabilities. I'm not going to read you this whole thing, but DMR, is easy, low cost, but it does have a lot of things it can't do, whereas D-Star and Fusion has a lot of stuff it can do you can't do with DMR. So if you think you want to play with digital, go check it out. The best thing I've found is this Mike Myers. If you go in and just go mikemyers.me, you'll search forever trying to find this complete layout of the comparison. So put in Mike Myers and then D-Star, DMR, Fusion, all those words together in your search, you'll come up with it. He not only compares them and gives you these sort of things, but he tells you what he means by them. So if survivability isn't an issue for you, he explains what he means by that, you can figure out whether you can. But before you invest in any kind of digital stuff, I'd look at this and see if that's what you want. Now I picked DMR because of a number of different things. I want to try digital. Knowing how I am, unless it's something I really take a liking to, I'm probably not going to use it a lot. I kind of do it, try it. Okay, that's good. Now what am I going to try next? The other thing is I am what is called frugal. My wife refers to it as cheap. And she bought me this, okay, as a sign. This is about my chair. Okay? I grew up in Maine. If you come up from northern New England, that's your life. She gave me that. I took a picture of it, put it on Facebook, and all my cousins in New England said, yeah, that's how we were all brought up. All right? So DMR is the least expensive in terms of buying equipment. All right, these are the repeaters we have that'll do digital in town. These are the ones for D-Star. There are 3 of them at 3 different frequencies. All right. This is the only one I know of right now for Fusion, Yaesu Fusion. I understand there's a second one coming along, but if it's happened yet, I couldn't find it in the directories. These are the 3. Where's my controller? Ooh, I'm wearing this thing out. I've had this thing for years. We have 3 for DMR, and they are. Once you're a teacher, you always have a backup. Okay, these are the 3 from DMR right here. And you notice they're all UHF, and then these are the 3 for PS25. The 543 repeater, actually you can go out with either analog or P25, digital, you know, back and forth. You can't talk to each other, but you can be on one at a time. And there are a couple of 900 megahertz that also play with that. So those are the digital repeaters in that. All right, here's a really simple how it works. When you talk into this little beast, right here, what you say gets converted by a codec, a decoder of your voice. It puts it together with the digital ID of your radio, which we'll talk about how you get one of those. Whatever you have it tuned to. Now, we're used to tuning these things to particular repeaters. That you don't do here. I'll talk some more about how that works. You're saying, I want to talk to the Richmond Talk Group A, or I want to talk to Virginia statewide. That's an intention, okay? They may all use the same repeater. So that, your ID, the talk group that you said you want to be connected with, and a digital version of your voice, that's what the codec does, gets kind of slapped together in what I might call a MIDI file, gets transmitted over to the repeater. It's all digital. So it goes into a computer, and the computer kind of checks you in. It says, okay, he wants to talk on, let's see what I'm looking at here. I want to talk on Mid-Atlantic, okay? So it checks me into Mid-Atlantic. And then it sends out this My Radio ID to any of the other DMR repeater sites with computers in them that also have Mid-Atlantic. So it's kind of a strange sort of thing. You tune into the Richmond, one of the Richmond talk groups, you know, you immediately begin hearing voices come in, okay? It's not your imagination, it's the radio. But you hear people beginning to have conversations start up. Well, you could call CQ. I hear variations of people sometimes say listening, like we're used to doing on VHF, UHF, but particularly in the international one, I hear people calling CQ. But what you'll hear is the larger the collection, like statewide, Mid-Atlantic, and international, you'll hear the voices pop up, because what's happening is it's sending up your information to all these other computers, and they're kind of saying, okay, when I get something, I'm going to send it to this computer to this guy. So it's really a strange sort of thing. Sometimes internationally, I've heard it go, well, a good 5 minutes when the voices start coming up. So you realize the connection's being made. So your little file here is getting transmitted to all these other ones and being reproduced for anybody else. Okay? And of course, at the other end, you come out of the repeater, it gets reconverted into voice again, and there you go. It'll also show the digital ID of this person. One of the things about DMR and P25, not true of D-Star, I don't know about Fusion, is the radio ID is not, from the FCC's point of view, a substitute for your call sign. So you've got to use your call sign. Where with D-Star, that information is sent in such a way that you're satisfied, by using your radio, you satisfy the FCC's requirement for identification. Not true for D-Star, not true for P25. Don't know about Fusion. Any questions about that? That's what's going on.
How do you answer the other party? If you hear these different voices come in?
Well, it's like listening on HF, where you've got a number of people talking in, where you find a break point, or you call break, or whatever you want to, and you just talk to them.
Oh.
You're pushing the little PTT button. Okay, there are a number of people who sell them. Motorola is where it began. You can buy Motorola that get adapted to ham radio. They're more expensive, but they're big, tough beasts. Connect Systems was the next one to get involved. TYT really made a splash because they came out with these things. When I bought it, I think I paid $89 for it. They're now going for $80. Okay, so pretty cheap.
We've got two new competitors in market now.
Yeah, I know. I got a list of them up here in a second. So if you're frugal like I am, this could be a good fit, but you may be wasting your money if this is not what you want to do with digital. Okay, the way you get going around here is you get into DMR-VA. Isn't that a quick little thing putting it together? DMR-VA. And when you get on that website, you apply for a radio ID. That can take anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of days, depending how busy they are. They basically check you out, okay, and make sure you're legit, all the things you said you would. And then you get the radio ID, and you can't use the radio until you got that. By the way, if you have two radios, if you get two of these, like you get a mobile unit and one of these, this is fairly popular with people who do a lot of traveling in their job. They'll get a mobile unit, and you have two radio IDs, one for each radio. So, okay. A few of the terms. A zone is a repeater or a group of repeaters. Okay. There are ways of having multiple coverage in an area where you have more than one repeater, and they all kind of share things a bit. A top group is a channel. That's what what I just cranked up here was Richmond, Mid-Atlantic. Contact is my ID. Color code doesn't mean a lot to us. It's actually used in the commercial units. Remember, this is basically a commercial system. As a kind of like a PL tone to control what the repeaters will handle. What they do is they take a 12.5 kilohertz wide bandwidth, thank you, and they split it in half. So two people are using that same bandwidth. But of course you can't both transmit at the same time. And sometimes you'll hear a long pause when you have a conversation with somebody. Well, for you to hear them come back again, first it's got to travel however far it has to from computer to computer. Then the time slot, the slot that you're listening on has to be freed up. Okay, and you don't hear anybody else that's on there. So if you've got somebody else talking on that same repeater at the same time, you have no knowledge they're there. Okay, so it's a little weird. And a code plug. Have any of you used Chirp or RT systems to put your IDs and that sort of thing into these beautiful HTs? Okay, if you use Chirp or RT systems, I use it on my mobile units, I use it on this. I can share all my frequencies, great system. If you've used Chirp, code plugs do kind of a little bit what Chirp does. Now, these radios have a program in them that's pretty simple. These are little computers, right? They have a little program in them that's static. And what you're doing is you're loading in a table that includes all of the frequencies and the PL tones and all that sort of thing. I've not been able to dig into the code on these code plugs that you load into these radios, these DMRs, but it looks to me like they actually take the actual program, and when you make modifications to it, they kind of insert in the program. I think it's a procedural flow, kind of like JavaScript, and not a table lookup system. I can't tell that for sure, but from the way it behaves, that seems to be the case. I did some digging around to see if anybody would show what the code looks like, and I'd say they're not. So I think the manufacturers keep that to themselves. The code plug is the equivalent of what you do when you load up a table full of frequencies for your HT or your mobile unit, your analog unit. All right, that's what the screens look like. This is Virginia statewide. This is the one that I use to talk overseas. Okay. Your friend is going to be Echo, the Echo test. The reason is that on most analog repeaters, you either hear a courtesy tone after you've spoken, or you hear it to somebody else on, or you hear the tail of it. You'll hear it as it's squelching out. You don't hear anything like this. So you show up someplace and you want to know if you can use it, you don't have a clue. So you go to the echo test and you say, W4BRU, echo test from Richmond, Virginia. Notice the delay, computer, right?
W4BRU, echo test from Richmond, Virginia.
And anybody else who's monitoring the area will hear me do the echo test. Malin's replied to me a couple of times doing that. So, that's, echo test is how you find out you really got something.
You can't talk to each other on that,
On echo test, no.
though.
But once you know you got the connection, then you go to the channel you want to use. Do you want to use? Do you want to do?
So you can echo check any channel?
Well, what you're echo checking is whether you're echo checking whether your connection to the repeater is okay.
Okay.
You got no way of knowing otherwise. There's no tail. You don't hear anything. Okay. So this is how you know. So there's this kind of pushy sort of ham from somewhere up in the upper Midwest who has a K8 call sign, and he has this June sort of get on the radio, make contact today. You probably heard about this guy.
He's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah. and he puts it in June, and I always go on vacation in June. Well, you're out there, you know, you're out on the boat. Okay, so it's 8 o'clock at night. I want to contact. Okay, so I got this, and that's pretty much it. Where I am, you know, I don't have any place to put antennas or anything else. And so I start off fine during the month. I go on vacation and I start cussing him because I can't possibly do it. Last summer, I said, I'm going to get you. So I got myself a QRP 40-meter built a kit and an end fed. And I'm going up to Maine as usual. I'm going to put that baby in the tree and I'm going to win it this time. So the family decides we're going to the beach instead. And oh, by the way, we're going to have a rented second-story condo. So there goes your antenna stuff. So I go to the beach with my HT, my DMR, and the ability to use the remote control radio from here on tech. And this time I beat him. I, by golly, I got at least one contact a day and sometimes more than one. And my safety contact was, in the evening I'd get through the remote computer, the one here, the remote station, I would get on the 14543 repeater and I'd call Armin. And Armin and I would get our safety contact. But I talked simultaneously to a guy in North London and a guy in Haifa, Israel. One of my most interesting contacts was a woman named Susie. She was on vacation in Switzerland, but she was actually from Portugal. So we had a nice conversation. We talked to a guy in the northernmost town in Ireland. And by the way, he doesn't call it Northern Ireland, they called it North Ireland. Thought that was interesting. Talked to a guy in North London. I've talked to there was a guy up in the Great Lakes working at a camp. I just talked to people all over the place. So this and the remote station was what saved me. The other thing that's interesting about it is that I was in Topsail Island, so I was going into the Wilmington repeater, VHF. If I got to a certain kind of place in the condo, I could actually get a staticky contact. But no one ever replied. I never heard a voice on it. Actually, I did a couple times and they wouldn't talk to me. I don't know whether it's bad breath or what it was. This thing is UHF, okay, 440. And the repeater for it is about 5 miles south of Wilmington. I got in. Sometime when it gets ragged on these things, the voice will sound very mechanical. If you got a good contact, the voice will sound pretty normal. But I got in, and I got conversations most days. So, that's how I defeated the monster. the remote control station, and this thing. All right? So, what you do is when you tune it, you are tuning along these different things. I've got Richmond DCI, which is the international one. I've got Richmond local. I got a couple of Richmond TAC A and B. That's the sort of thing you'd use if you're going out. You'd say, I'm going to get you a TAC A. That kind of gives you a couple of frequencies here. There's Virginia statewide, that sort of thing. If the channel is not being used, then when you click it, you hear this sound. Because there's no way for you to hear what anybody else's house is on. That's the only way you know. If the channel is in use, that's what you hear. So that says you can't get in. So you push the PTT, and you either hear that or you hear that little musical sound. Musical sound says you can start talking. Okay? So echo test, and that's how you know you can make a contact. All right. There are a whole bunch of things we'll take a look at down here in terms of zones and all, but that's a menu that's on here. If you move to a different zone, if I go to Charlottesville, I'm going to change my zone, and you can do that from a menu on this. There's a little green button you use, and you just adjust the menu for what you want. So the code plug is the key to it. That same website, DMR, this one right here, you can get your downloads. You can. There are sometimes updates to the software on these things you can get. You get your code plugs from there. Now, when I went to North Carolina, I went on the website and looked for North Carolina code plugs, found some, loaded them on my radio, zipped on down. So most places where they got code plugs, you can do that. This summer, we are really going to Maine. And I looked up where the DMR repeaters are, and where we stay is down here on lake level, and we've got bridges all around us. So, and the closest DMR is about 30 some miles away, kind of over the hill. So I don't think DMR is going to do me very much good. So I'm going to see if I can figure out how to defeat the monster this year. But I've ordered a microbit X, still got my end-fed set. See if we can do something with that. And of course, there's always the remote station.
When are you going?
End of June.
It only takes 3 days with DHL, but it takes them a couple of months to build it. So bad.
Yep. Well, we'll see how I do. Okay, so these are, in terms of code plugs for Virginia, these are the radios that are supported. If you know you're going to be traveling a fair bit up into Pennsylvania or something like that, you do well to look at their code plug thing before you buy something. Now, the Connect systems and the TYTs are popular enough so almost everybody supports them, but some of the other gear you might or might not, so it's worth looking at it. Mobiles are just kind of coming along, so you're probably going to find fewer support for that. These are hams, volunteers, who will put together the code plugs for these radios. So you download the one for the radio you buy. Here's my software. This is the piece of software that you use to load the code plug. It's kind of an editor, and you go in, you download and upload to your radio with it, that sort of thing. Then here happens to be the one for Virginia. This is actually last year's. I have a more recent one on, that I downloaded from that website. And that's going to be loaded on my radio. Here's the one for North Carolina. Turns out the North Carolina one also includes Richmond, Norfolk, some of the big cities in Virginia. So it's kind of good for traveling. I can get the big guys on the way. I haven't messed with this one, but the code plug editor is supposed to allow you to take pieces from several places. And my route to Maine is actually, 95 is generally a disaster, so I go up 81 through Pennsylvania across Massachusetts. And so I'm going to build a code plug that will take me up to all the sites that way. All right? So I haven't tried the editor yet, that's one of the next things on my list.
Is that similar to like in sailing in your GPS, you can put in waypoints? Is it kind of like a good way to think of it? Are they
No, it's really the location. I'll show you here in a second. It's easier if I show you here. I'll get to it in a second. All right, so this is zones, channels. If you load up this piece of software I told you about, this is the list of things you see, okay? And one of the things are zones. I've got the Richmond zone, and it says, okay, here are the things that we do for the Richmond zone. So those were the things I was dialing on here, okay? Richmond TAC 1, right here, and so forth. Virginia statewide, those are the things on this phone, on this radio. You don't really do anything with it, I just show you what it is. That's looking at the contents of the code plug. The one thing you do need to change is in the basic information. Once you get your radio ID, you put in your ID, your radio ID. You can put any radio name you want in there, but generally you put in your call sign because the radio, the other guy's radio will show that call, will show your ID, and some of them will also show this radio name. It's a lot friendlier with your code. Then you put in whatever you want to appear on it when you start it up. So, so when I turn mine on, it shows this call sign and phone number, which means that if you find this and I've dropped it someplace and you're a nice person, I'll give you a call. Right? Maybe, all right. Okay. So here's an example of DCI Richmond, which is the one you use for international stuff. What you can see is what it's called. Here is the receive and transmit frequencies, and that's the one on the channel 23 tower. It's shared by a whole lot of people at the same time, and so that's what's in here. If you know what you're doing, you can change them. Most of us don't know what we're doing, so we leave them as they are. But when you dial up DCI Richmond, you're going to be talking to these repeaters with this code, okay, with that name, and so forth. Here is the Richmond zone. Yeah, okay, I said that's the things you got to do. Okay, all right, there is one called Monitor All. It doesn't really monitor all, but these are the things that they monitor. That's one that you can change. If you decide, for example, this handles most of the channels in Richmond, as well as Australia, Canada, UK, you can take those off, or you can add another one like Germany or whatever else you want over here. So these are what's available, and these are what's set up for Monitor All. So in Monitor All, you listen to all the conversations. All right, so you get your radio, you plug it in. Most of them come with a plug, okay? This goes into the speaker mic thing, you plug this in. This is a dumb plug, it sees nothing until you turn the radio on, and then your computer will see it. Had no problem with that both in Linux and Windows doing it. So the first thing I do is I read from the radio, okay, and then store that. I like to be able to go back to the original if something doesn't seem to work right, okay? And then I load up the code plug I want, okay? Open the code plug, right? Bring it in, fill out things like my ID, that sort of thing, and then I write to the radio. That's this button here, and it loads the code plug of the radio. Now I'm ready to go. All right. So, if you want to know a lot about this, because this is about as much as I know, Mike Baker, who's one of the gurus on DMR, on the 28th, is doing a morning session on DMR. You'll learn a lot about it. You'll learn a lot more of the things, what they mean, what you can do. I've just fiddled around with it a bit, but he knows how you can contact, who you can contact, when you can contact them, a lot of details. He's teaching on the 28th. If you'd like to go, and you haven't already signed up, you can go out to the RARC website, fill out the registration form, get a nice, crisp, new $10 bill, and show up at the class upstairs on the 28th at 9 o'clock. And you'll learn more than you ever want to know about DMR. These are some fun things. This DMR is trying lots of stuff. One of the guys I talked to this last summer was the guy who's doing this job here. What he put together is a DMR radio and an Android phone. And the idea is he can make the code plugs auto-loading. He basically reads the GPS location on your phone and can also compute kind of where you seem to be headed. And based upon that, he can load up code plugs that will basically walk you up as you go wherever you travel to. Okay. So an Android phone and a DMR put together. He runs. It's out of. It's RFinder, and if you use a repeater, some of the repeater books, RFinder is one of the people who does it. They provide the repeater information to ARLs. And you can see how he's using that for his system. So interesting conversation with him. The other thing is, you can get these, basically, I call them digital sticks, that go into your USB port on your computer and allow you to deal with D-Star, DMR, Fusion. About 150 bucks to 200. There's one called Shark RF, something like that. Yeah. RF Shark. This one's called DV4 Mini. When I talked to Susie in Switzerland, where she was located, you know, Switzerland is, I'm told, a very mountainous place, and hitting a DMR repeater is tough. So she had one of these plugged into her computer. Now we talk about what's real ham radio. Well, she's using RF with about a 6-inch link between the DMR unit and this little thing sitting on the computer. And then going through that, she connected to the internet, and then she could hope to be a part of the DMR conversation. The guy I talked to up in Michigan was at a girls' school. There was no DMR repeater near there, so he had one of these plugged into his computer. So lots of interesting stuff you can do with fake ham radio. All right, any questions? What do you ever want to know? Yes, sir.
I have one of these, and I turn it on, and I hear virtually nothing.
Really?
Yeah. Every once in a while, someone will say, Virginia statewide, no one's going to answer.
Okay.
And I assume the radio works because the echo test works.
Yeah, I don't use mine a lot. This is my travel one thing I do when I travel. But I've been in quite a number of conversations now. I've not tried at night. I usually do it during the day because it's up in my radio room office.
But let's say you go to DCI.
Yep.
If you don't do any, do you have to go in there and say your call sign before you start hearing conversation?
Yes, you have to check in.
Okay.
So you do, now the monitor all is a way of monitoring it without checking in.
I've done that, I very, very occasional statewide, and someone will call me.
Yeah.
Unless you have gone in and checked in on that.
Yeah. So so when any of the other talk groups, you don't hear anything until you've checked into your local computer.
Clear on,
Mayor, will you pass on some more information to be useful? What else? What we think?
Oh, but, you know, once you pull up one of these links, you've got like a 15-minute window before,
Yeah.
and then it'll time out and you
Yeah.
haven't used it. But you can also go back to clear all and pull that up, and that will drop the link so that somebody else can use it. Because you're tying it up for that interval.
So you're saying,
Call W4BRU on
so you're
tag
saying
A.
when you dial a group up, if someone were talking on that group, you're
W4BRU. Sorry, what?
So you're saying if when you dial that group up, if someone were talking on it, you hear them?
No, not until you checked in.
Oh, you still have to check?
Well, remember, we may have 20 people out here. You're not going.
Well, by you checking in, you're telling your local repeater to connect to that
Telling this computer,
worldwide group.
I'm telling this computer to make this digital,
Okay.
sign this digital ID over to whatever talk group he picked, okay? Now I'll start hearing them.
Right.
Although what you're saying, Rick, is you're not hearing them.
Because I never do that.
That's true. That you won't hear anything. Monitor all, you can get a lot of stuff, but I find if I go to a particular talk group, I'll actually hear more than I do in monitor all. So I've got a feeling that monitor all must get the lowest priority. So if there's enough action going on here, I'm not going to hear them because everybody else has got priority. Yes?
Maybe a pop, but I read somewhere if you have a code plug in your radio and you put in another code plug, it erases the other one. Is that true?
A code plug is the code. It's like on your browser going to a completely different website. The website you had up there is gone.
All right, so in other words, if I have Virginia code plugs in there, and I would put in North Carolina code plugs, and I have to reload Virginia code plugs later.
That's right. And so I always look, like when I did the North Carolina one, I don't have the North Carolina one on here, but the North Carolina one, you know, it had all the towns in North Carolina.
So you can't put in all the code plugs.
But you can preload those on, right? You don't have to carry
No,
your laptop.
they're one at a time. Now,
No, I mean, into your radio.
no, in your computer, but not in your radio. You have one code
So
plug
you
at a
have to
time.
travel around with a laptop to program your radio?
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. You have the code plug is the software that runs the radio, and embedded in the code plug is this information. So when you go on the editor, all you're doing is pulling up a code plug and seeing what information you got and maybe making some minor changes. That's all you can do. This code plug editor that I showed you, this piece of software I showed you, allows you to put together your own code plug by grabbing for others. I've not tried it yet. It's my project for my trip to service.
Who runs the service that connects the internet to this thing? In other words, you're hitting these servers or computers, where are they? Who paid for them? Why are they there?
Well, you know, that's always a question with ham radio stuff is who the devil's doing this stuff.
These aren't servers shared with state or city or...
No, it's ham radio.
So in the case of the work one, I think there's a server right there for the rats.
Yeah, channel 23.
It's up to the computer right
Okay,
there.
so they're ham operated?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's all ham. It's all ham radio.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, this is there is a commercial version, but it's not what we use.
okay.
So this is channel 23 tower. The other one is downtown.
It's the mysterious downtown something.
Yeah. One of the Love Ladies setups.
Right.
I think there's one going into Goochland.
So I think there's one down in Prince George.
Yeah. Well, there's one in Petersburg.
Fredericksburg, and
Yeah.
all out the western part of the state.
So,
There's a handful of Jay's 84 BTZ. He and a band, he and a band of Mary DMR have been putting up mushrooms all around the western part of the state. Richmond, it comes up and down a little bit. But those guys have tied in a whole lot with North Carolina DMR group.
yep.
And there's a very tight relationship between them. So there's a lot of synergy between North Carolina and Virginia, Central Virginia and Western Virginia. There's not, I don't know about the eastern part of the state very much.
But there's a guy in Grapevine, Texas, who is one of the key developers of some of this stuff. So it's a very closely linked. Well, it's the ham radio. The guys are hooked on something, whatever it is, D-Star or this.
So the servers are located typically where the transponder is?
Well, they're going to be where the repeater is.
Okay.
Okay, because you're going to go basically USB or Ethernet to this computer, which is going to check you in. You're going to run the internet. Sir.
Bruce, it's the same connection that you use if you're using the repeater and doing IRLP. It's the same concept of You're coming off the repeater, going into a computer who then sends the traffic out via the internet to wherever it is it's supposed to go.
The difference, of course, with IRLP is once that repeater frequency is hooked up to something IRLP, everybody deals
Yeah,
with
it's
that
hooked up,
IRLP
yeah.
location. That's it. Where here, if you're not overloaded, several of us can be using what is basically the same repeater with different conversations. You'll have the delay you heard when Rick gave me a call, okay? And the delay you heard with the echo text. But basically one repeater is shared by a number of different talk groups who don't hear each other. They only hear the one they're signed up for, okay? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand. So, say you load up a plug,
Yep.
okay, and then you go out into the field and you're out there, and then suddenly you want to talk on something else.
Good luck, yeah.
So you can't
Have a
do it.
good time.
You can't?
Well, most of the code plugs are very widespread. So-
They are, but your question fundamentally goes back to when you saw that screen that talked about whether they were flexible, whether they were dynamic.
Yep.
This technology is designed not for amateur radios. This is designed to be used by the police, by school bus systems, by school systems, where everything is defined and controlled by the people who run those systems.
And the people who have the license isn't the guy with the radio.
With the radio.
It's either the state government or it's Motorola's local distributor. And you're locked down tight.
So say, say you load up all the ones for North Carolina and you're driving down to Florida. Once you get out of North Carolina, you're.
That's why I said I'm trying to learn to use the editor. Because what the editor is supposed to be able to go in and say, okay, I'm going to
The
take.
editor's in your radio or?
No, it's on the computer.
Oh, so you have to have a laptop with you?
No, but what I'm planning to do, use the editor for, I'm going to I do the same thing with my radio in my car.
Yeah.
That route trip I take up to Pennsylvania, I load all the stuff through Harrisburg and on up to Keene, Vermont, into my radio in my car.
Yeah.
And as I go on up, I can flip it up and talk on all repeaters. I'm planning, if I work out how to do it, to load up all of the zones.
Yeah, that part I understand, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Or you can try that $700 Android telephone combination. Well, I mean, you know, a high-end telephone bill is $700. It might be a bad deal. Yes, sir. Sorry, I can't hear you. What?
All right, to clarify a little bit, because I've been playing with DMR on a different radio, different code plug, different software. Basically, as long as you know the repeaters, the talk groups, and the zones where you want, you can set up anything because the code plugs and software are getting up to 10,000 contacts, 10,000. You can make them as big as you want because the radios are going to pull the software. And these
You can have
programs
an
are
enormous
getting
plug.
bigger and bigger.
Would you have an enormous code plug and almost everything you can think of?
Exactly, and I can,
Probably the
I mean,
East
you
Coast.
can program it to cover many states, many countries, areas, and it all depends on what your software will do.
Or you could just use
And
an
then you
Android.
can plan your trip, set it up. The trick is knowing where you're going to be at. You're going to run into Richmond, you're going to run into Carolina, you're going to run into South Carolina. You set your zones up to follow it, but you have to manually trick it, or use the stop, switch the zones, keep going, keep up with it. Some of it will follow, some of it won't.
One of the advantages of the Motorola, if you come to Mike's presentation, where you'll get a lot of this stuff and a lot more about it. The Motorola will do some roaming.
Yeah.
It'll do some roaming between different repeaters. This will not. Okay. So if I know I'm going to Charlottesville, I got to click this little green button, and I got to go down to the zones, and I got to find the Charlottesville zone, and then I click it. So, you know, so that's what you've got to do. Where the Motorola, it will roam and find those that are valuable. So, but it's a $500 unit versus a $8,500 unit.
Is there always a delay back and forth in the conversation?
No.
Oh, okay.
And the more local it is, the fewer delays I've heard locally. And it also depends how busy it is. You know, you're sharing this stuff with a bunch of folks. So I have had times in which I've gone back and forth. When I was talking to Susie in Switzerland, we had a regular conversation back and forth. Every so often there'd be a slight delay, but not much. And then I had a conversation with a guy in North Carolina, using the North Carolina statewide. And I mean, we must have had, 2 minutes between each part of the conversation. Obviously, a lot of stuff, either the repeater or in this network, were being used. And so, that's the way it goes.
Bruce,
Yes.
can you take multiple code files and merge them together as one code, one big
That's what
code
the
file?
editor is for, I talked to you about.
And then you can load in here, and then you've got North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, all of it.
Well, but remember, whenever I'm going to Charlottesville, I gotta now go to the menu, go to the zone, and pick out Charlottesville. So I can have an enormously long list here. That's why your comment about put them in order. Okay, so my trip up, okay, I know my usual route up 81 and across Massachusetts. I know the places up there. Very easy to get a list of what they are. So I'm going to go through and pick those out. But I'm going to pick Springfield, Mass. Okay, but I'm not going to pick, I don't know, some Acton or something like that, because that's one more thing I got to go through.
You can edit, you can edit what you want in that code plug and delete it.
That's what I'm told. And I told you I haven't used it yet. Mike Baker's thing is good. It's a good $10 investment. Right?
With the radio or the plug?
No, the $10 investment is his class. Yes.
And it might be of interest to know that you can program analog
Yes.
simplex computers as well.
That's true. I do have analog on here. And so, with all the things you'd expect, so I can get into an analog side. Yes, sir?
Can you put analog frequencies in it on the fly?
Probably, but I haven't tried. At first, you couldn't change much on your keyboard. I've noticed as time has gone on, I've had this for about 1.5 or 2 years, there's more and more you can change with the keyboard.
Firmware upgrades?
Huh? Yeah, they made changes and upgrades to it.
There's a lot of stuff, but I haven't looked at it.
Remember, this is my frugal guy who wants to try digital, who uses it occasionally when he's traveling out of town, because there ain't nobody to talk to on the VHF and UHF repeaters. And I get kind of hungry when I'm down in Charlotte with the kids, or when I'm someplace else like that, and I want to talk to somebody on the radio. So I got two choices. I bring up the remote unit here, and I bring up this.
On international.
Well, if I get out of North Carolina, I put in the North Carolina code plug. And it hits all the big stuff. It hits Richmond, Petersburg, South Hill, and Danville. So it takes me fine, and then North Carolina is fully populated. So I can bounce on down, talk to people on the way if I want to, and then have a conversation with them, once I get down there. So that's what I use it for. Any other questions?
Go back to the slides for the class.
There it is. Sir.
Is that PowerPoint presentation available somewhere?
For a reasonable fee, I can tell you. I put it up on the website as a PDF. But you're going to learn, if you really want to learn this thing, go to Mike's thing and talk to him. He's going to do you a lot more on Motorola, because that's what he uses. But what you'll get is a much better insight into kind of how it's structured and what you can change and how you can change it. Because even though the layout of even though this kind of layout is different with Motorola, it's actually better with Motorola. It's like spreadsheets. But even though the Motorola does the same sort of thing, it's a little easier to use, and because it has roaming capability, if I were going to be, I've talked to some guys sometimes who are basically over-the-road truckers, and they use DMR they also use VHF, UHF repeaters. And they will set it up for their route, okay? But they use a Motorola, so that now as I move from Richmond to Charlottesville, it will seek and find the Charlottesville one. I don't have to physically change the zone. So very inexpensive digital, fun to play with. I've enjoyed it. It's one of the things that talking to people overseas and DMR did was make me realize how much I want to get my antenna and transceiver going. Because I like to talk. I like QSOs. Don't care anything about contesting or points, but I love to talk. Talking to a guy in Haifa was just great fun. So I want to start doing that more in HF. So it had a lot of inspiration to get more on HF. So I've actually got the antenna set up, and it's working really well, and now the transceiver isn't working. So, you know. Any other questions?
All right, so you all heard Bruce swear at the June radio run. Well, there's a reason you got to press that PTT once a day. So anyway, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Bruce, for your presentation, and